What is up, everybody? Welcome to Pub Sports Radio. Welcome to Stat Diggers. We have UFC Vegas 60, and we have Song Yadong going against Cory Sandhagen. As of now, a 14-fight card. They are potentially looking at getting Sodiq Yusuff a fight right now. Last time I checked, and they posted last night that they have Yusuff still on that co-main event slot. So we'll see if he gets a new opponent. But as of now, just it's 14 fights here. I'm here as always with Uncle Weezy. Weezy, what is up? Are you looking forward to this 14-fight card?
Yeah, it's an interesting card from top to bottom. There's a lot of fun fights on this one. I'm really looking forward to breaking this one down. And then we're going to have a week off after this and come back to Yan Xiaonan versus Mackenzie Dern. So that'll be an interesting card too. But yeah, this was at 15 fights. The co-main event was going to be Sodiq Yusuff versus Giga Chikadze, which would have been a hell of a fight. But yeah, Giga had to pull out of that one. So we'll see if they find Sodiq a new opponent. But even if they don't, I think that this card, really from top to bottom, is going to be action-packed.
Yeah, and initially looked into this card earlier in the week. I think it's a really good spot for violence as well. So definitely looking forward to it. The goal is to try to get done before the game tonight. 14 fights. I think we can do it. So we're just going to get right into it. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, all the good stuff. We'll start with the first fight of the card. We have Luma Lukebumi going against Denise Gomez. We have Lukebumi, who is 26 years old, 5'1" with a 61-inch reach. Gomez, she is 22 years old, 5'2" with a 63-inch reach. Lukebumi, she is 3-2 in her last 5 fights. She had a decision win against Alexander Albu. She had a decision loss against Angela Hill, a decision win against Jinyu Fry, a decision win against Sam Hughes, and then a decision loss against Ludacris Godinez. As far as Denise Gomes, she did fight on the Contender Series against Sayano Amanda and won that fight by decision. So this was a matchup. I looked into the Gomez and Amanda fight, and honestly was very underwhelmed with the two. I did end up going with Gomes, and I thought she looked a lot better than I expected, but I don't think Amanda's that great. I think this is going to be a big step up in competition. I think it's going to be a very tough test here. Loma, she's very young. Both these fighters very young. Loma's been looking very good as of late. We've seen her implement some takedowns as of late. I think that can come out here in this fight. On the feet, technique and pure skill, it goes to Loma all day. But Denise kind of has that dog in her. Her chin's not great. She gets knocked down a ton, hurt a ton, but she's very tough. She's going to be there to the end, and she's a fighter that kind of gets going as the fight goes on. So skill for skill, I do think Loma's the better fighter here. Denise is still very, very green, but I do think she can make this somewhat competitive. I like her striking output. I like how she does get better down the stretch, and I think this should be a kind of a competitive fight, but I do think Loma is the much better fighter as of now. So yeah, interesting fight here. We have Loma as a pretty decent-sized favorite to open up the card. Weezy, how are you feeling on this one?
Yeah, 26 years old versus 22 years old. So very young fighters involved in this. And it's a Muay Thai striker versus a Muay Thai striker. So we kind of know what we're going to get here. And both ladies out-volume their opponents thus far. This is just going to be, kind of like when you break down this fight, break down who you think's going to get the better of the stand-up. Because we saw Gomez fight against a really good grappler in Amanda, stop the takedowns, and really avoid being in Amanda's most comfortable place, which was on the ground. And, she was attempting 16.27 significant strikes per minute. Gomez was in that fight showing 68.4% striking defense. So this is going to be a fun one. Gomez is 4 years younger. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage. He's going to be 1 inch taller. And they're both Muay Thai strikers. Gomez a little bit less experienced as a pro and much less experience at the UFC level. It's obviously Loma Lukebumi who's fought the much better brand of competition here. But Rayan Amanda and Milana Dudieva are decent opponents, for Gomez the last 2 times out. But yeah, because Lukebumi's more experienced at the UFC level, because we know that she comes from a striking background where she had something like a couple of 100 fights, she basically grew up in a gym in Thailand. So this young lady is definitely, the more experienced fighter, the more experienced combat fighter, because Lukebumi was doing this long before she got into MMA. She was just, a Muay Thai striker as well. So much more experienced, fought the better brand of competition, has actually shown to be able to get takedowns at the UFC level as well. So maybe she can mix that in. So I got to think that she wins this fight. But I was very impressed with what I saw from Gomez. And I think that this is going to be a really fun way to start off the card because you got a nice little striker versus striker matchup, and both of these ladies throw down. So I think they're both going to come forward. It's going to be a bit of a car crash, and something tells me that the fight doesn't go to decision might be a decent look for this fight.
Yeah, the fight doesn't go to decision is probably at pretty good plus money. Yeah, the fight doesn't go right now is at plus 225. The fight goes to decision is minus 305. We have Loma as a pretty decent sized favorite. She opened up minus 275 and she is currently minus 260. Yeah, I think Loma wins, but just don't really want to lay minus 260 on her, to be honest. So I'm probably just going to pass on this fight. Any thoughts on the money line? Any props you're potentially looking at? You said the fight doesn't go, could be interesting.
Yeah, the fight doesn't go is something I might look at, but when I see striker versus striker, and you got Gomez is 4 years younger, he's got a couple inch reach advantage, 1 inch height advantage. Maybe at this current line, I'd be more likely to bet Gomez than I would look Boomy, but I've got to watch more tape on both of these ladies. It's early in the week still just getting right past the last card. But in this one, I just feel like the line is a little bit wide, seeing as we've got similar skill sets on both fighters here. It's kind of how I felt about the Melissa Martinez versus Elise Reed. That was a striker versus striker, and I took Elise Reed at plus 150 because I was like, this is a striker versus striker matchup, and one lady has fought the better brand of competition, and that was Reed.
Yep, for sure. And we got a dono in the chat. We got Joshua, $10 donation. Appreciate you, Joshua. Thank you for the dono. Thank you for hanging out with us on a Sunday here with the football going on. Lots of stuff going on. Do appreciate you coming in here today. He says, thanks for the hard work last week. Cashed Aldana and Reed, likely because of the show. Must watch for MMA betting degenerates. Cheers. Appreciate you, Joshua. Does go a long, long way here at Pub Sports Radio. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have a very intriguing fight. Tony Gravely going against Javid Basharat. We have Gravely, who is 30 years old, 5'5", with a 69-inch reach. Basharat, 27 years old, 5'9", with a 69-inch reach. Basharat is 3 years younger. He's going to have a 4-inch height advantage, same reach there between the two. Tony Gravely is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, a decision win against Geraldo de Freitas, a knockout win against Anthony Burchak, a knockout loss against Nate Maness, a decision win against Simon Oliveira, a knockout win against Johnny Munoz. And as far as Javid Basharat, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, had that submission win on the Contender Series, and then he makes his debut against Trevin Jones and wins that fight by decision. So, yeah, this should be a very interesting fight. We have a wrestler in Tony Gravely, very good wrestler, tons of power on the feet, going against a very good fighter all around, Javid Basharat. Should be a good one, Weezy. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so when it comes to the measurables, you got to like Basharat being 3 years younger and having a 4-inch height advantage, but they're the same reach. Javid switches stances, actually. I've got it listed here as an orthodox fighter. But when you watch the Jones fight in particular, he's switching stances back. He's going to southpaw about 25% of the time. So, but Gravely's way more experienced. 18 more pro fights, about over 250 more minutes in the pro cage. And that's in only 6 more months as a pro. So that's kind of hilarious here that Tony Gravely's fighting over 4 times a year, while Javid Basharat has got 12 fights in 6.5 years. So Gravely's just a very, very busy fighter. And Gravely more experience at the UFC level as well, with 5 more UFC fights and about 40 more minutes in the UFC cage. But Javid is a hell of a finisher, 92% finish rate. The only guy he didn't finish was Trevin Jones. And that was largely a striking battle here. But when we look at these striking numbers, Gravely, over a fairly large sample size of 7 fights in 70 minutes, is throwing about 1.5 more significant strike attempts per minute, landing almost 1 more significant strike per minute than his opponents do. That great power number at 0.86 knockdowns per 15 minutes and about a 1.5% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed shows you that this guy not only can win minutes by throwing more and landing more, but he can also win moments with that power that he has in his hands. And Javid is doubling up his opponents, more than doubling up his opponents thus far, with landing 5.5 significant strikes a minute, only absorbing about 2.5, and throwing about 2.2 more significant strikes attempts per minute, but that's a little bit skewed because he was fortunate enough to fight that absolute bum on the Contender Series, Orhan Kalan, who was 14-0, but on the Israeli regional scene where he was fighting a bunch of cab drivers and beating them, but he got into the cage with a real fighter and got absolutely stomped. And Javid, did a nice job of grappling against Orhan, and he did a nice job of striking against a no-gi grappling champion in Trevin Jones. So at that tender young age of 27 for Javid and only 12 professional fights, he's already showing a very mature skill set where he can, formulate a game plan and stick to it to be able to fight towards his opponent's weaknesses. In the Kalan fight, that guy had nothing but weaknesses. So, he was able to do whatever he wanted there. But in the Trevin Jones fight, we saw him keep that fight standing and win minutes and land at over 50% on Trevin Jones, while I think really showing some really good striking defenses. We see Basharat sitting around 65%, Tony Gravely sitting around 47.5%. So I do like Basharat's ability to be able to maybe even win some minutes in the striking exchanges here, but I think it's going to be very close on the feet. The thing about Gravely is he's done a great job of winning minutes with the grappling, Brady. 31 takedowns in only 7 UFC fights, 46.5% control time for, 12% control time against. So this guy's spending almost 60% of his 70 minutes in the UFC cage in control time positions for or against. Javid is got 34% control time for, 0.29% control time against, but all of that control time came against that bum Kalan. So Gravely's fought the better brand of competition. He's got more power. He's definitely the busier wrestler, the more experienced fighter, and they've got the same reach here. It's just that Gravely's been finished in 6 of 7 losses, and Javid Basharat's got a 92% finish rate, and he's never been finished and he's never lost. So this is another potential violence spot that's kind of sticking out here. And, I could see this one finishing inside the distance, but this is a damn good fight, dude. Who do you like here?
I don't like the line. I think Gravely's getting a little bit disrespected here because, like we mentioned, he has a ton of advantages in this fight. And if we think the striking is going to be close and he has that power, there's just some question marks about Javid and his takedown defense. What is his takedown defense like? What is his get-up game like? Because he's fought nobody the caliber of wrestling as Tony Gravely. So minus 194 for Javid. I mean, it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Opened up a pick'em, currently minus 194. Gravely opened up a pick'em, currently plus 169. It just seems super, super wide. Tony Gravely could absolutely go out here and take down Javid and just do it for 3 rounds. So for me, it's probably a dog or pass. But again, also violence as well sticks out. We have the fight doesn't go at only minus 130. Both guys are very, very good finishers. And like you said, Gravely's been finished a ton, 6 of 7 losses. And he has a 56% finish rate in that power in his own right. So I'm looking at violence, and from a money line perspective, I'm probably looking at Gravely. Like we always say, hype drives the line. There's a lot of hype on Javid, but Gravely's a very, very, very good fighter with a lot of great tools. So dog or pass from the money line, but I do agree with some violence.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I didn't even look at the line of that fight until you just talked about it. And yeah, that's wide. Gravely's more experienced. He's fought the much better brand of competition, got a ton of power in his hands, and the guy wrestles constantly. So if he doesn't like what Javid's doing to him on the feet, he can change up where this fight takes place and be the guy to actually win minutes there. So I might have to look at him Gravely. I mean, if I'm getting him at plus 170, I think I have to make that bet.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where the line goes as well, because like I said, Javid's a very, very hyped prospect. People are really looking forward to this guy. His brother is also fighting on the Contender Series, I think, on Tuesday. Yep. So I think that might even drive the line a little bit more, especially if his brother wins and looks good. So yeah, I'm kind of going to monitor this line throughout the week, look into the fight a little bit more, see if I can see the takedown defense and get up game of Javid, because I just haven't seen a ton of that yet. And like I said, he's never fought the wrestler of caliber of Tony Gravely, not even close. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. This is a fight that I believe I have a bet on, so I'm curious to your thoughts on this one. We have Aspen Ladd going against Sarah McMahon. We have Aspen Ladd, 27 years old, 5'6" with a 66-inch reach. Sarah McMahon, 41 years old, 5'6" with a 66-inch reach. The only thing that really sticks out in the tail of the tape is the age. Aspen Ladd is going to be 14 years younger than Sarah McMahon. Same height, same reach there. Aspen Ladd is 2-3 in her last 5 fights, a decision win against CR Eubanks, a knockout loss against GDR, a knockout win against Yana Knutsakaya, a decision loss against Norma Dumont, and then a decision loss against Raquel Pennington. As far as Sarah McMahon, she is 2-3 in her last 5 fights, a submission loss against Ketlin Vieira, a submission loss against Mary Renault, a decision win against Lena Landsberg, a submission loss against Juliana Pena, and then a decision win against Carol Hoza. Weezy, when I look at this fight, I really, really like it for Sarah McMahon. I like everything about this matchup for her. The only thing that I don't like is the age. But outside of that, I think she has a really good chance to go in here, get takedowns, some of the best wrestling in the division. And as long as her gas tank holds up for 3 rounds, she should be able to easily win this fight. Aspen Ladd, her striking's not even, the best to begin with. So on the feet, it's not like a significant advantage. Like even in the last fight with Carol Hoza had a very big advantage on the feet against Sarah McMahon, and McMahon was still able to, get her down, and Rosa wasn't able to do a ton on the feet, and it's kind of the same thing with Aspen Ladd. Like her striking on the feet's not good, and I just struggle to see Aspen Ladd having a ton of success on the feet without McMahon taking her down. So McMahon, she should have the path to victory here. The only thing that's kind of scaring me away is the 42 years of age, and her birthday is 9/24, so she's going to be 42 pretty soon, right? So that's the only thing. But outside of that, I think it's a good matchup for her. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this fight here?
Yeah, I mean, everybody says not to bet on 40-year-old fighters, right? But that's 40-year-old male fighters, okay? Women get pissed off once they pass 40 years of age. And let me tell you something, you don't want to be in the way of a pissed off woman that's past the age of 40. So I've got to bet on Sarah McMahon here. But all kidding aside, look, Sarah's more experienced, 7 more fights, 40 more minutes in the cage, 6 more fights at the UFC level, about 50 more minutes in the UFC cage in comparison to Ladd. Now, it's Ladd who's the better finisher, 78% as a pro, 75% at the UFC level. But Sarah McMahon, 46% finish rate, 43% at the UFC level. Now, McMahon has been much less durable. She's been finished in 5 of her 6 losses. Ladd only finished in 1 of 3 losses. But so the striking, neither one of these ladies is, doing much on the feet of any note, right? 3.78 landed for Ladd a minute, 4.65 absorbed. 2.09 landed for McMahon, 2.06 absorbed. Both these ladies' striking defense below 50%. Both of them are landing a knockdown about 3 to 4/10% of the time. Ladd a little bit more knockdowns per 15 minutes. But everything that you need to know is in the grappling stats here. Sarah McMahon has 13 UFC fights in about 125 minutes in the UFC cage. She's controlling 62.32% of that time in control time positions up against the cage or with her opponent's back against the mat. If you are not comfortable in the grappling exchanges, you do not want to fight Sarah McMahon because 75% of her fights almost are taking place in control time positions for or against. She is out controlling her opponents at almost a 6-to-1 ratio, which means that she's winning about 83% of the control time positions that she's in. And like I said, she's in those positions almost 75% of the time. Her wrestling is the best in the fucking division. Period. That's it. And Aspen Ladd has 62% takedown defense, and Aspen Ladd has only faced 8 takedown attempts in 7 UFC fights. She's losing the first 2 rounds of this fight, guaranteed. The question is, does Sarah McMahon gas out? Does she let Aspen Ladd get on top of her and then let Aspen Ladd start throwing that ground and pound while making those terrifying screaming noises while throwing the punches? Because there's not a referee in the UFC that can stand to listen to that shit for more than 15 seconds without stopping the fight. So this is what, you have to worry about Sarah getting reversed here. But I'm telling you, man, her wrestling and her top control are absolutely fantastic. And I have not seen any evidence to suggest that Aspen Ladd is going to be able to stop those takedowns or get back up. Look, she's been controlled for about 17.7% of her UFC cage time, more than 1/6 of the time, despite the fact that she sees just a little bit more than one takedown attempt per fight. I think Sarah's going to drown her. I think Sarah's going to take her down easily in the first, second, and third rounds, probably get over 10 minutes of control time, and even win some stand-up exchanges because Aspen Ladd's striking isn't that good. Aspen Ladd wins moments. She doesn't win minutes, and you don't get a lot of minutes to win moments against Sarah McMahon when she's controlling 62.3% of the 123.77 minutes that she's been in the UFC cage. I got Sarah McMahon to win this fight, brother.
Well put. I could not agree more. Let us take a look at the line here. We have man, there's so many freaking fights on bet. There it is. There's so many fights on that fight. There's like 30 fights for some reason. But we have Sarah McMahon. She actually opened up as a big favorite. Currently minus 180, or opened up minus 180. She's currently plus 110. And we have Aspen Ladd opening up plus 155, currently plus 130. So the odds makers thought that McMahon should be the favorite here, and I kind of agree with them as well. I think she should be the minute winner of this fight with the wrestling, and as long as her gas tank holds up, she should be able to kind of cruise here. Are you thinking inside the distance for McMahon or by decision? I was kind of leaning the decision route for her.
I think decision, it's not like Aspen Ladd's getting finished by a lot of people. She only got finished by Germaine Duran to me, and that was after a horrific weight cut, and Germaine hits about as hard as anybody that's in any women's division. So, I think it probably does go to decision because the way that Sarah fights, if you can hold off, if you can keep her from getting that arm triangle, she's probably just going to control you on the ground for the full 15.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing it the exact same way. So that should be a fun fight there. We will move on to the next fight, another female fight, and this is going to be a very good one. We have Maria Agapova going against Jillian Robertson. We have Lou Betch's girl, Maria Agapova, going against Clint's girl, and Jillian Robertson. We'll see who pulls it out here. We have Agapova, 25 years old, 5'6" with a 68-inch reach. Robertson, she is 27 years old, 5'5" with a 63-inch reach. Agapova, 2 years younger. Agapova 1-inch height advantage, and then it's going to be Agapova with a 5-inch reach advantage. So tail of the tape is going to be on the Agapova side. Agapova is 2-3 in her last 5 fights, had that decision loss against Tracy Cortez, a submission win against Hannah Cyphers in the first round, a knockout loss to Shanna Dobson, one of the more iconic moments that I'll never forget. She was over a minus 1,000 favorite. Was that the same night that Rodolfo Vieira got submitted by Fluffy, or was that just...
No, you know what that was? That was the same night that Timur Valiev beat the shit out of Trevin Jones for about a round and a half, and then Trevin Jones landed a lead right hook and dropped Timur. That was the curtain jerker on the night that Agapova shit the bed, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, I remember I had like 80%. Freaking 80% ownership on DraftKings
right there with you
on Agapova, just because Shanna Dobson, I don't know what happened there, but she lost to Shanna Dobson. That was a horrible look. She actually bounces back though, and I think she was a dog against Sabina Maza. She looks really good. She looks probably the best she's ever had. She looks calm, composed, and hurts Maza very bad in the third round and submits her. And then she gets submitted by Marina Moroz, her last fight out. So Robertson, she is 2-3 in her last 5 fights, a decision win against Botelho, a decision loss against Santos, a decision loss against Maverick, a submission win against Priscilla Cheating. And I went back and watched that fight today and just saw her, Priscilla, just try to gouge her eyes out. Yeah. And then one of the announcers were like, man, she's a cheater. She cheated at the weigh-ins. She cheated in the fight. And yeah, that's how she got her nickname, Priscilla Cheating. And then she goes out there and loses to JJ Aldrich. I think this is a pretty simple fight to break down. Jillian Robertson, solid wrestling, black belt in BJJ, very good grappling, very good control on top. Maria Agapova thus far in the UFC Contender Series combined, she is showing a 50% takedown defense. We saw Tracy Cortez go that route, win a decision against her. And then we saw Marina Moroz go that route and submit her. We saw Moroz have a ton of success on the mat. And I think if Robertson does get this fight down to the mat, a sub will be very, very live. Robertson's ground game is very good. She's dangerous. She's able to get into dominant positions. And Maria Agapova, as the fight goes on, she definitely slows down. So I think it's a really good matchup for Jillian Robertson. But Agapova, when this is on the feed, she's going to have opportunities to really hurt Jillian Robertson. I think this is just a clear striker versus grappler matchup here, but I'm leaning with the grappler, Robertson. I think she has all the tools to win this fight, and not only win it, but win it inside the distance as well.
Yeah, so that's what Jillian does. She's taking girls down and submitting them. She's got a 71% sub rate in her 7 wins at the UFC level, and the other one was a knockout. And believe me, it wasn't a straight left. Okay, it was a ground and pound knockout. So Jillian is going to do best when she's on the ground, and she's 18 of 44 on her takedowns. She's getting 2.36 per 15 minutes, averaging just under 1 submission per 15 minutes. And she's controlling her opponents 43% of the time and giving up 22% control time. So she's succeeding in keeping fights where she wants them to be, which is in the grappling exchanges. She's really only spending about a third of her fights, and that's 115 minutes in the cage, standing at range. While Agapova, I'm not even sure if these stats are correct, because I think when she fought Cortez on the Contender Series, they weren't keeping control time numbers. And if that's the case, it's not just 24% control time against for Agapova. It might be something more like 40 or 42%, just because Tracy Cortez obviously is somebody who wrestles a lot and gets a lot of control time. So we're going to have to remember that Agapova has just not done a great job in not being controlled by her opponents when her opponents want to grapple. And like you said, the Moroz fight and the Cortez fight are both examples of that. And even she got dominated on the ground by Dobson after she gassed out. So she's, got some growing to do, but she still has got just 4 less professional fights than Jillian. It's just the experience disadvantage at the UFC level is a little more pronounced here, as Jillian's got about 70 more minutes in the cage. But yeah, Jillian they're both great finishers, 80% overall in their 10 wins. And Agapova's finished all of her UFC wins, and Jillian Robertson's finished 6 of her 7 UFC wins. And at the UFC level, Jillian's been finished in 2 of 5, and Maria's been finished in 2 of 3. So that's 4 of 8. So they're being finished 50% of the time in their losses, and they're getting finishes 8 of 9 in their wins. So this is a great potential violent spot. I'll be interested to see where the fight doesn't go to decision is for this one, because if it's plus money, I think there's going to be some value in it. The strength of schedule numbers definitely leaning Robertson here, and especially the wins. So I do like Jillian Robertson to do what she's always done, which is get fights into the grappling exchanges. And if she does that successfully, I think she's going to be able to find some success on the ground against Agapova, who just really hasn't looked good there yet.
Yep, could not agree more. Let's take a look at this line. We have Robertson opened up as a dog, plus 110. She is now minus 141. Agapova opened up minus 130. She is currently plus 121. It almost seems like it's too easy here for Robertson. The path to victory is just right in front of her face there to take. So yeah, I do like Robertson. I don't know if I'm going to lay chalk on her though. But yeah, I was interested in the fight doesn't go as well, but it looks like they're all over it by a mile. You typically don't see female fights where the fight doesn't go is juiced, and it's juiced to minus 185. So Ooh. I was hoping for any type of plus money, but as of now, we are not getting anywhere close to plus money, which is just an obvious pass.
Wow. Yeah, definitely an obvious pass. I'm going to go put that into the prop template and see how crazy that is.
It's got to be like 30% overpaying, something crazy like that.
Minus 185?
Minus 185, I believe, yes.
Yeah, the divisional finish rate versus the implied probability of the line suggests that we're overpaying by about 24.5%. But the fighter finish rates versus the divisional finish rate, these ladies are finishing at a 30% rate higher in their 17 UFC fights than the division does. And when you compare the fighter finish rates to the implied probability of the line, it's about 72% while we're only paying 65%, or it's about 71%. So we're still actually at minus 185, getting a little bit of an edge when you compare the fighter stats to those other two metrics. But still, yeah, paying 180 minus 185 for a 125 fight doesn't go to decision, I don't think is a good idea.
Yeah, so hopefully Bet Online like messes up the under 2.5 or something, so we'll have to look out for that. But yeah, should be another good fight there. All right, moving on to the next fight, we have Anthony Fluffy Hernandez going against Marc-André Barriault. We have Hernandez, 28 years old, 6 foot with a 75-inch reach. Barriault, 32 years old, 6'1" with a 74-inch reach. We'll take a look at the last couple fights between the two. Hernandez is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Submission loss against Marcus Perez, a submission win against Jung Young Park, a knockout loss against Kevin Holland, a submission win against Rodolfo Vieira, and then a decision win against Josh Fremd. As far as Marc-André Barriault, he is 3-1 and 1 no contest in his last 5 fights, a no contest against Oscar Pejota, a knockout against Abu Azatar, a decision win against Dolce Longambula, a knockout loss against Chidi and Njokuani, and then a submission win against Jordan Wright. So I think I really like Fluffy Hernandez in this matchup. And I like how good he's been looking lately. He's been going in there and he's been looking very good. Not only did he have that nice upset win against Rodolfo Vieira, but put on a very good performance against Josh Fremd. I was able to go out there and almost finish him multiple times by submission. Was able to push a very, very heavy pace as well, get a ton of takedowns in that fight against Fremd. And I think if he wants to win this fight, he'll be going for takedowns as well. And you kind of take a look at Marc-André Barriault, and that's something he struggled with in some of his fights. We saw Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright, I never thought I'd see it, but he went out there and he did take down Marc-André Barriault twice. And then we saw against Jung Young Park. Jung Young Park was able to take down Marc-André Barriault a good amount of times as well. So I feel like the path to victory is here for Fluffy Hernandez. I think on the feet, I probably do favor Marc-André Barriault, but it's competitive. I don't think he has a massive advantage there. And then I just think Fluffy Hernandez has a clear path to victory, and that path to victory is getting the fight down to the mat. So again, Jung Young Park took down Marc-André Barriault 5 times. Jocko took him down. Sanchez took him down a couple times. Dolce took him down a couple times, and Jordan Wright took him down a couple times. So with how good Fluffy's wrestling has been looking, I think the path of victory is here for Fluffy Hernandez. So I'm leaning on the Hernandez side. I do expect him to fight with a good game plan. And as we know, he's super tough. He has great cardio, and I think he has all the tools to win this fight. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys watch this show a lot, you know the kind of fighters that I like. I like guys that bring just a sick pace and they wrestle and they just put volume on their opponents. And their number one way to win fights is literally just to break dudes, just break them, make them quit. And Anthony Hernandez is the middleweight version of Jonathan Pierce, and Jonathan Pierce is my favorite fighter right now. Just a guy that goes out there and that he's always going to be offense, just offense, 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 offense. And if you don't have the gas tank or the wherewithal to deal with something like that, you're going to break. Now, what makes this matchup so interesting is the fact that Barriault is known for his durability. He's known for his conditioning. They call the guy Power Bar. So we got a couple of guys here whose best weapons are their pace, their conditioning, their pressure. And it's going to be like a car crash. Hernandez is 4 years younger and has got a 1-inch reach advantage. Barriault's got 8 more pro fights, 2 more UFC fights, and a lot more minutes in the pro cage and the UFC cage in comparison to Hernandez. It's going to be Hernandez who's the better finisher with a 78% finish rate, while it's 71% for Barriault. And both guys are finishing at a 67% rate at the UFC level. Hernandez has been finished in both pro losses, while Barriault's much more durable, and he's only been finished in 1 of 5 pro losses. Hernandez lands more strikes than he absorbs. He throws about the same amount of volume as his opponents. Better power numbers in both knockdowns per 15 and knockdowns per total significant strikes landed than Barriault, but not by much. Just he's a lot more accurate, while Barriault is a lot more defensively responsible. But you see the 14 takedowns in 20 attempts. When you're taking 20 attempts and getting takedowns at a 70% clip, that's special. 44.5% control time for, that's special. And he's allowing 25% control time against. But, that tells us that a guy who's a grappler and who uses his conditioning as a weapon is in control time positions about 70% of his UFC cage time. That's fantastic. It's exactly what you want to see. And we've seen Barriault get 2 takedowns, but be taken down 12 times and be out-controlled at almost a 2-to-1 ratio. So Hernandez is going to do what he has done the whole time, which is push a pace and push it with his wrestling. And then we even look at the strength of schedule, and it's a better ratio and about the same amount of experience overall for Hernandez. And the wins are much better for Hernandez, as he's actually beaten guys with winning records, guys like Vieira and Jun Yong Park, while Barriault's wins are over guys like Jordan Wright, Dalcha, Oscar Pajota, Abu Azatar, not quite as good. The average record of an opponent that Barriault beats is 1.67 wins and 2 losses at the UFC level. So, yeah, I like Hernandez here. I like him a lot. I think he does everything that Barriault does a little bit better, with the exception of the striking. But I don't think that this fight's going to be in the striking range for much.
Yep. I think the path to victory is certainly there for Hernandez. Let's take a look at this line. So we have Hernandez opening up as a -150 favorite, currently -170. Marc-André Barriault open at +130, and he's currently +145. So Anthony Hernandez, slight favorite. Line makes sense to me. In terms of this fight I think this fight does go the distance. Marc-André Barriault is super, super tough. Only got knocked out by Chidi and Njokuani. And that guy hits like an absolute truck. So I'm kind of leaning Hernandez and Hernandez by decision. Any thoughts on the money line? Any thoughts on any props?
Yeah, I put it in the prop template, and the violence is a little bit overpriced. We're getting 3 negative percentages at -160, but the +120 on the fight goes is a little bit of an edge in the fighter finish rates versus the implied probability, a little bit of an edge in the fighter decision rates versus the divisional decision rate, but nothing that's jumping off the page. And for the fact that these guys fight at such a pace, I could just see it being back and forth. I could see cashing a fight goes to decision bet and wishing that you didn't make it, just because of how intense this fight is going to be. I can't wait for this one. I'm picking Hernandez, but in terms of the time props, I'm going to be staying away, because I think that this one can absolutely finish due to the type of fight that Anthony Hernandez seems to bring every goddamn time, and that is just an absolute barn burner.
100%.
And by the way, Brady, Colby Chaos said in the chat that Colby Covington should be my favorite fighter. Dude, he's right there with he's in the top 3, where I'm not ranking any of them. Colby Chaos, Anthony Hernandez, and Jonathan Pierce right now. They're just the pace monsters.
I like it. All right, we'll keep moving on to the next fight. We have Damon Jackson going against Pat Sabatini. We have Damon Jackson, 34 years old, 5'11", with a 71-inch reach. Pat Sabatini, 31 years old, 5'8", with a 70-inch reach. We have Sabatini 3 years younger. It's going to be Jackson with a 3-inch height advantage and a 1-inch reach advantage. Damon Jackson, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Had that submission win against Prasad Bektic, knockout loss against Ilia Topuria, a decision win against Charles Rosa, submission win against Camilla Kirk, and a decision win against Daniel Argueta. As far as Pat Sabatini, 5-0 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Tristan Connolly, won that fight by decision. He won by decision or submission against Jamal Emmers. He won by decision against both Tucker Lutz and TJ Laramie. So this should be a very, very good fight. We have a grappler versus grappler matchup, 2 phenomenal grapplers, 2 phenomenal wrestlers. Cannot wait to see how this one plays out. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so let's just skip right to the grappling stats. Damon Jackson controlling his opponents almost 50% of the time, and for Sabatini, it's 53.3% of the time. Sabatini being controlled almost 25% of the time, and for Jackson, it's almost 21. So when we put those numbers together, Jackson spending about 70% of his fights in control time positions for or against. Pat Sabatini spending 78% almost of his fights in control time positions for or against. So what do you think, man? Striking match for 15 minutes that everybody hates?
I hope not.
I hope not too, man, because we deserve to see these guys grapple. It's going to be a great fight. You know, I would say that Sabatini's wrestling is better, and I would say that Damon Jackson's submission grappling is better. But, it's going to be very, very interesting because I think that both guys here are pretty much going to get the fight that they want. I think they're going to still, even though they know that each one of them knows going into that cage that their opponent is most comfortable in the grappling exchanges here. But Damon Jackson, a 1-inch reach advantage, a 3-inch height advantage, switching stances on the feet. He's more experienced with 7 more pro fights, 4 more fights at the UFC level. 71% finish rate overall for Sabatini, 85% finish rate for Damon Jackson. And Damon's been finished in all 4 of his losses, and Sabatini's been finished in 1 of 3 losses, and that's when his arm snapped in half, courtesy of Ali Cat Gonzalez, who broke his arm. Or I think it was a dislocated elbow. Either way, that's when the fight ends. So, both of these guys don't land a lot of significant strikes. But if I'm picking who has the better striking here, I like Damon Jackson striking a lot more than I like Sabatini's. But Sabatini does have a knockdown in 4 UFC fights, and Damon Jackson does not. Both these guys striking defense, 51% for Jackson, 53% for Sabatini. Sabatini's got a better ratio overall when it comes to the strength of schedule, but it's Damon Jackson who's fighting a much more experienced competition and the better competition, in my opinion. This is a very, very close fight. I think both guys get the fight they want. I think that this fight should be lined about 50-50, but I'm leaning Damon Jackson to win this fight. So when I saw the line, I had to make a bet.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very, very close fight to me, and the line just does not indicate that. We have Pat Sabatini open up minus 225, currently minus 200. Damon Jackson open up plus 190. He is currently plus 170. So it looks like money is coming in on Damon Jackson, and rightfully so. It's a close fight. Both guys are fairly similar. Both guys have really good pace, really good wrestling, really good grappling. I feel like this is a fight that can just go either way. And when you feel like a fight should go either way, you probably should be taking that plus money. So I got to look into it a little bit more, but I'm very tempted as well on the Damon Jackson plus money side. Pat Sabatini is an absolute beast. I'm very high on him. Lots of hype on this guy. And this is another situation where I think hype is driving this line, just like the Javed fight. So could Sabatini win? Absolutely. But I just think it's going to be a lot closer than this line does indicate. Sabatini's not going to go out there and run through Damon Jackson in a round. He's not going to run through him in 2 rounds. I don't see him finishing Damon Jackson at all. So, I mean, I think this fight probably does go the distance, honestly. And I think it's going to be super close with both guys having their moments. So I'm right there with you. Have not placed a bet yet, but he is something that did catch my eye as well. In terms of the violence props, though, we have the fight goes to decision at minus 135. The fight doesn't go to decision at minus 135. Both these guys are very good finishers, but I feel like it's just going to kind of cancel itself out here. We have Sabatini, 71% finish rate. Damon Jackson, 86% finish rate. Jackson's been finished a ton in all 4 of his losses, 3 by knockout, 1 by submission. I just don't see Sabatini knocking out Jackson. And then Sabatini has been, like you said, finished by knockout, injury, and his only loss. So I think this fight does go the distance, but not something I'm running to the window to play.
Yeah, and for fight goes to decision, it's minus 135. That's about a 57.5% implied probability. And the divisional decision rate is about 58 or 57%. So it's priced right about where it should be. But you see, here's the thing. Damon Jackson's been finishing all 4 of his losses, but he's getting knocked out. He's not getting subbed. I just don't see this fight being on the feet for much. And even if it is on the feet, these guys aren't knockout artists. They're grapplers. And they're both good enough grapplers that I don't think either one is going to submit to either one of them either. So, yeah, I kind of feel like minus 135 for the fight goes to decision. And maybe if we can even get a cheekier price on that over 2.5 at minus 150 maybe, I think that might be the best way to go. But, yeah, I bet Damon Jackson's money line here. I got him at plus 180 on Caesars William Hill. And I'm very happy with that line. I think this is a very close fight. And I think both of these guys are best where the other one is best. And, yeah, I got to take the plus money here.
Yeah, for sure. I cannot agree anymore. All right, so we'll move on to the next fight. We have the return of Officer Trevin Giles going against Luis Cosce. Really looking forward to this matchup. We have Officer Giles. He is 30 years old, 6 foot, with a 74-inch reach. Louis Cosce, he is 27 years old, 5'9", with a 71-inch reach. Cosce is 3 years younger than Giles, but it's going to be Giles with a 3-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage as well. Officer Giles, he did have a split decision win against James Krause, a knockout win against Pavon Lewis, a decision win against Roman Dolidze, a knockout loss to both Dricus du Plessis, and then Michael Morales, his last time out, 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Louis Cosce, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He did beat Victor Reina on the Contender Series by knockout, and then he got knocked out by Sasha Palatnikov. Louis Cosce, prior to his fight against Sasha Palatnikov, had never been to the second round. And it was like 8 minutes into the fight, they brought it up on screen, and they said that that fight with Sasha Palatnikov, if you combine like all his other fights up, you will get the amount of fight time that was in all of his other fights at that same moment. And it was only like 7 minutes, 8 minutes into the fight. It just goes to show that Louis Cosce is somebody that goes and gets in and gets out. And there's not a ton of footage out there on Cosce, but I watched some of his fights from a couple of years ago. And as soon as the fight starts, he's just charging in, running to the center of the cage and just knocking out his opponent. He gets in and he gets out. And we saw that he almost got in and got out against Sasha Palatnikov, but Palatnikov was able to get hurt a bunch of times, able to survive. And at the end of the first round, Cosce had just nothing left. Palatnikov was able to finish him in that third round, but we saw that Cosce just had nothing to give in that second or third round. And this is a fight where I think Cosce, if he wins it, it's probably in the first round. We've seen Trevin Giles get knocked out in the first round. In his last fight, Trevin Giles has been finished a ton. I think he's been finishing all his losses, so Cosce will definitely have his opportunities. It's just there's a really small window, I think, for Cosce to finish this fight, but he definitely has the power to do so. As the fight goes on, I do think Giles will have success. I think Giles has some good wrestling in his own right, completing takedowns to 64%. He's now a black belt in BJJ. He has a ton of power as well, has a really good jab. I think it's kind of Cosce early here or Trevin Giles late. Another spot that really sticks out for violence, though.
Yeah, great violent spot when you've got 5 combined losses from these guys and all of them are inside the distance. And Giles is getting subbed. He's getting knocked out. Cosce comes out like a goddamn Tasmanian devil. And, you know, if he doesn't get you out of there, you're probably going to be able to get him out of there late. But that fight against Palatnikov was an all-timer. It's a beautiful fight. I mean, I think that Cosce's getting a little bit of a bad reputation about his conditioning because I don't know any fighter that would have gotten off the stool after round 1 and been able to put together a good 2 rounds after that, you know, crazy first round in that fight. Even after Cosce almost finished him about halfway through the round, Palatnikov was throwing massive volume in the second half of that round. It was one of the craziest first rounds I've seen since Na Liang versus Ariane Carnelossi. You know, it was a barn burner. So I think that Cosce's conditioning is a little bit better. I mean, take a look at it, right? 17 significant strike attempts per minute, 18 coming back his way. I mean, when do you see people throwing volume like that? That's nuts. So you broke down this fight perfectly. I mean, like, Giles is the better all-around fighter without question. Like you said, he's got a great jab, which he never uses. He's got great power. He's got great wrestling, which he never uses. And he's got really bad decision-making in the grappling, which allows him to be able to win a lot of minutes and then pull a dumbass move and then get submitted in the third round. So he's a very, very... Look, Giles is a fucking frustrating fighter to bet on. Plain and simple, dude. If you've bet on more than one Trevin Giles fight, you probably hate this guy's guts because he's probably cashed when you were betting against him, and you've probably won, you know, when you were. This guy is very difficult to figure out, and some of the things that he does well, he won't do at all when you're looking for him to do them. So, but look, he's got a 3-inch reach advantage. He's got a 3-inch height advantage. He's got 10 more professional fights than Cosce. He's got 135 more minutes in the pro cage than Cosce. 3 more years as a pro. 7 more fights at the UFC level. About 85 more minutes in the UFC cage. The regional scene competition that Trevin Giles faced is better than everybody Louis Cosce's faced in his entire life. I mean, you could go through Cosce's entire resume, and there's 3 guys that Giles fought on the regional scene that would have body bagged every single opponent that Cosce fought. So Giles has got the better striking. He's got the better conditioning. He's probably got the better wrestling. His ground and pound is fantastic. Dude, if this guy gets on top of you, he's a serious, serious problem. And as you mentioned, dude's a black belt, you know? And then if you beat him in the cage, he could probably send his cop buddies after you to break your legs while you're sleeping in your bed. So Cosce, though, we know what he's going to do, Brady. He's going to come out, he's going to swing hammers, and if he connects early, might be the end of your night. So, look, I think violence is a fantastic way to play this fight. We'll have to see where these violence lines have opened up. But look, Giles has fought the better brand of competition. He's the better submission grappler, probably the better wrestler. Probably he is the better technical striker. He's more experienced. You know, he's taller and he's got a 3-inch reach advantage. So if you're betting Cosce, you might as well just bet first round knockout.
Yeah, and if you're betting on Giles, I recommend not doing so because I learned a long time ago betting on Trevin Giles it's a terrible experience. It's a terrible experience because he has all the skills. He has all the skills, all the attributes. It's just he doesn't use any of them, like you said. So just frustrating, man. So Giles, he's a -200 favorite. Cosce's +170. Yeah, from a money line standpoint, I'm not touching this fight, but from a violence standpoint, I'm looking at the unders. I'm looking at the fight doesn't go. Right now, they have the fight doesn't go at -145, which is just nuts. It's on sport bet, it looks like, but at -145, I was kind of expecting closer to like the -300.
Yeah, at -145, that would probably be a 5-unit bet for me. Just from what I know about these guys, and we haven't seen Cosce in forever. And I know that he's pulled out of a couple of fights, so who knows if he's even healthy. But, you know, I was going to say about Giles, you know, when you bet on this guy, he won't do shit. He's just going to fucking stand there. And then when you bet against him, he's not doing shit until he fucking lands something big. And then all of a sudden he's doing something. And you're like, God damn it. So, look, bet on this fight at your own risk. I think what I'm going to do is bet violence. And I still could wind up being very mad because Trevin Giles probably doesn't do anything. But I think Cosce first round knockout, if I can get it +400 or better, is going to be something I'm going to be sprinkling.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have a Nicholas Mata going against Cameron Van Camp. This was a fight that we broke down a while ago at this point. But Mata, he is 29 years old, 5'9" with a 70-inch reach. Cameron Van Camp, 29 years old, 6'1" with a 74-inch reach here. We'll have to see how the weight cut goes for Van Camp, but he is coming down a weight class, I believe, for the first time in a while. But he's going to be huge at the division. He's going to have a 4-inch height advantage, and he's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage as well. Mata, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Jim Miller, got knocked out by Jim Miller on the Contender Series. He did go to decision, won that fight by decision. Not a ton of volume in that fight, but he did land the bigger shots, ultimately got the decision, I think by landing like 40-something significant strikes. Cameron Van Camp, he is 4-1 in his last 5 fights, made his debut against Andre Fiallo, and he looked good. He looked very good. He's a huge dog. He was having a ton of success. He even hurt Andre Fiallo, and then he kind of got a little bit over too aggressive, and then he got clipped against Andre Fiallo here. So this is a matchup where, you know, you take a look at Van Camp, and outside the UFC, he's doing a ton of wrestling, a ton of grappling, very opportunistic with his submissions. Has a lot of submissions on his record as well, and he has some good power, some good striking, very long, very rangy. You have Nicholas Mata, who doesn't do a ton at all. He barely throws any volume, barely lands anything. But when he does land, he lands with some serious power. I feel like Van Camp can definitely be competitive, if not win minutes here, with mixing in takedowns, with, you know, landing more volume. But one thing that really scares me is the striking defense of Cameron Van Camp. On paper, it is 29%, and you can just see it outside the UFC as well. I mean, his hands are down. He's walking forward. He's willing to eat shots, and you don't want to eat shots against Nicholas Mata. I think it's a very competitive fight, but the striking defense of Van Camp is something that seriously concerned me when watching the tape on him. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, like, here's the reason you don't bet on Cameron Van Camp. 29% striking defense, and you're fighting somebody in Nick Mata who, if he hits you once, you might not move ever. It's like you could be paralyzed from your neck down. This guy hits hard. So very interesting fight because Mata's a Nova União guy. And when you think of Nova União fighters, usually the first thing that comes out of any commentator's mouth is, this guy's got good takedown defense. Jose Aldo, the original Nova União guy who's almost impossible to take down. They're all very difficult to take down. And we see that Nick Mata, 22 minutes in the UFC cage, he's never given up a takedown, but he's only had one attempted against him. Boy, Cam is fun to watch. But God, I don't like this matchup for him, man, at all, because Nick just hits different. I mean, you watch this guy's regional scene footage, and some of the knockouts are pretty terrifying, aren't they, dude? You remember a couple of those?
Yeah.
They're bad, dude. It's like when when Pereira knocked out that dude in LFA who didn't move for 5 minutes. That's what a lot of these look like. So, and Mata's already been in there with, Miller and Lowry. Those are some pretty decent fighters, dude. We still need to kind of figure out what's going on with Cam Van Camp, but he's been fighting some veterans on the regional scene, and he's got a good all-around game. Still only 29 years old. He's going to be the taller guy. He's got a 4-inch reach advantage. He's got 7 more pro fights, about 50 more minutes in the pro cage. And he's got a very slick submission grappling game, but we haven't seen him be able to get it going yet. And the fact that he's not shooting any takedowns against Andre Fialho, even though it was a quick fight, is very troublesome to me. He should have been shooting right away in that fight. So, I got to go with Nick Mata here. I think all it's going to take from one. All it's going to take is one from him. And we've seen Cameron Van Camp be knocked out a couple of times as a pro. So I think Nick Mata probably knocks him out.
Yep. I mean, it's a bold strategy to come in there against Nick Mata with a 29% striking defense and block punches with your face, hands completely down. Just not a great strategy. We saw Mata hurt Miller a couple times. We saw Mata hurt Lowry on the Contender Series. Wasn't able to put either of them out, but I feel like he probably does knock out Van Camp here. We'll take a look at the odds, and we have Mata opened up as a minus 235 favorite, currently minus 225. Van Camp opening up plus 220, currently plus 190. The only thing I don't like about that is Mata. He's not a minute winner. He doesn't throw anything. I just see him getting a knockout on this one. So if anything, I'd probably take a look at Mata by knockout or inside the distance, which right now is at plus 145. I think that's much, much better than the money line. And then also the fight doesn't go to decision. I think covers both sides because Mata's pretty chinny. Mata's been knocked out like 3 or 4 times in his career. He's been finished a lot as well. And Van Camp's a pretty good finisher in his own right. So I think fight doesn't go. Mata inside the distance, Mata by KO are all ways I'm looking at playing this fight.
Yeah, for the fight doesn't go, the fighter finish rates versus the implied probability of the line, we get a 3% edge, and the fighter finish rates versus the divisional finish rate, 16% edge, but it's only in a 3-fight sample size. When you compare the implied probability of the line to the long-term benchmark, we're overpaying by about 13%, but we would expect, to overpay, just because, look, 7 of these guys' 10 combined losses as pros have been inside the distance, and they're finishing at a higher rate than that, better than 77% as pros. So the fact that we're only paying 63% on the line right now is, it's interesting because this one has violence written all over it.
Yeah, it does. So I think that is a very good look. Curious to see where they put the over-under out at. Wouldn't mind getting that under 2.5 as well if it's a decent price. But yeah, I think violence is another good spot in this matchup.
Agreed.
All right. Next, we have Daniel Zellhuber going against Trey Ogden. Really looking forward to this fight. We have Trey Ogden, 32 years old, 5'11", with a 71.5-inch reach. Zellhuber is 23 years old, 6'1", with a 77-inch reach. Tail to tape in favor of Zellhuber. He is 9 years younger. He's going to have a 2-inch height advantage and a massive 5.5-inch reach advantage. Ogden, he is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He made his debut against Jordan Levitt, lost that fight by decision. We'll talk more about that fight in a second. Zellhuber, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, and he had a Contender Series win against Lucas Almeida, who went into the and made his debut against Trezano and knocked out Trezano, looked phenomenal in that fight. So to go out there and beat Almeida looked very good, especially down the stretch. I thought that was a very impressive performance, and it's very impressive in general how good this guy is looking at only 23 years old. He's a black belt in BJJ. He has phenomenal striking. He's very long, very rangy, good offensive wrestling. Just a lot to like about this guy. And like I said, he's only 23 years old. It looks like he's doing some work at Extreme Couture as well, so training with some very good guys right now. Just a lot of good things with Zellhuber. As far as Trey Ogden, this guy is a grappler. He's a black belt in his own right. He made his debut against Jordan Levitt. I think it was on somewhat short notice, but yeah, man, what a piss poor effort put by Trey Ogden. That's the only fight you will ever see Jordan Levitt outstriking anybody in. And I did have a bet on Ogden in that fight, and I did think he won the fight live, but going back and watching, and I don't think he won that fight. Levitt was just outworking him, just doing more. And I think Levitt set a record for leg kicks in a fight. If Jordan Levitt is setting a striking record on you, what is Daniel Zellhuber going to do to you, right? So I think the striking it's in favor for Zellhuber by a mile. And then another concerning thing I saw in the Levitt fight, Levitt cannot stuff a takedown. He wants to be taken down. Levitt has like a 30% takedown defense. I think Ogden was like 1 for 4. Jordan Levitt was stuffing his takedowns. That's scary. Is he going to take down a much bigger Zellhuber with a very good takedown defense who is very long, very hard to take and hold down? When you can't take down Jordan Levitt, who that's his thing, he gets taken down. I think this is a very, very tough matchup for Trey Ogden in every aspect of the fight game here. I think Zellhuber, he has that black belt. He's very well rounded. He's going to have a massive striking advantage. He's going to have a massive cardio advantage. I think this is Zellhuber all day. The line doesn't really indicate that it's going to be Zellhuber all day, really, but I think it's a really good matchup for him. I just don't see where Trey Ogden's going to pose many problems. Is Ogden going to outstrike him? No. Is he going to take down and control Zellhuber? I guess that's the path, but if you can't do it to Jordan Levitt, I don't know if he could do it to Zellhuber here. So, Weezy, curious to hear your thoughts on this one. I am pretty high on Zellhuber, and I'm thinking about placing a bet on him, but it looks like money's coming in on Trey Ogden. So maybe we can find out why.
Yeah, so Ogden's more experienced, but it's Zellhuber who's 9 years younger here, 2 inches taller, 5.5-inch reach advantage, and he's switching stances. And look, I mean, this is a striker versus grappler matchup any way you look at it, because, with Zellhuber's striking, you see the dude is absolutely huge for the division. Don't see a lot of 77-inch reaches at lightweight. You just don't. So, and then with Ogden, even though he took the fight on short notice, you have a guy who lost minutes in the striking to literally the worst striker in the division in Jordan Levitt. That, dude, if you're betting Trey Ogden, you better be fucking sure that this dude gets takedowns. Because if he doesn't, you've got a dead ticket there, because this guy lost minutes to Jordan Levitt on the feet. And then you go and you watch this guy Zellhuber on the feet. Dude, he uses his length well. He's clearly a prodigy. This guy's just getting started. He's only 23 years old. Man. And dude, what about this? Even if you catch this kid, he's got a brick for a chin. He's in there with Lucas Almeida. Lucas Almeida hits like a truck. Did you see what he did to Trezano? I mean, it was unbelievable. That win is aging so well for Zellhuber right now. And then when you watch the footage prior to that, you're like, man, this guy's a killer. So I can't believe this line opened where it did. I would have been laughing my ass off if I had researched this fight and saw that line open. I would have been laughing as tears would have been pouring down my face as I max bet that thing twice at plus money for Zellhuber. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, he couldn't take down Jordan Levitt, who wants to be on the ground. And he's going to have to take down this massive Zellhuber who's 6'1". Man, I like Zellhuber a lot here.
I agree. And I was tempted on the money line at minus 230, but looks like money's coming in on Ogden. Zellhuber opened up minus 225. On BetOnline, he's currently minus 220. And Ogden opened up plus 190. He's currently plus 185 there. So yeah, I'm looking at some Zellhuber. Might just play him straight. I think he's a good parlay piece, but I don't think I'm doing any parlays this card, so I might just bet him straight there. We take a look at the fight goes to decision is sitting at plus 100. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 140. Yeah, I could see a finish here. I could see Zellhuber knocking him out, potentially submitting him. Ogden's been submitted a ton. He got submitted, I think, twice by Thomas Gifford. So yeah, I think fight doesn't go solid, but Zellhuber money line is what I'm looking at the most here.
Yeah, and we've got 23 of their 32 combined pro fights have finished inside the distance, and they're both above 70%. 70% for Ogden, 75% for Zellhuber. And the fight doesn't goal line is only sitting at 58%. So, violence might be the way to go here because Trey Ogden is a very good submission grappler, and he's never won by knockout in his career. So if he's going to finish guys, he's going to submit them. And if he's unable to get this fight to the ground and he was losing minutes on the feet to Jordan Levitt, Zellhuber's probably knocking this dude out.
Yep, I think so as well. All right, we'll move on to the next fights. We have Andre Fili going against Bill Algeo. We got Fili, 32 years old, 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. Bill Algeo, 33 years old, 6 foot with a 73-inch reach. We got Fili 1 year younger, Algeo 1-inch height advantage, and Fili with a 1-inch reach advantage. Andre Fili has won 3-1 no contest in his last 5 fights, a decision loss to Sadiq Youssef, a decision win against Charles Jourdain, a decision loss to Bryce Mitchell, no contest against Daniel Pineda, and then a knockout loss against Joe Anderson Brito. As far as Bill Algeo, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a decision loss to Ricardo Lamas, a decision win against Spike Carlisle, a decision loss to Ricardo Ramos, a decision win against Joe Anderson Brito, and then a knockout win against Herbert Burns in one of the Herbert Burns with one of the worst displays of cardio I've ever seen in my life. But that's besides the point. Algeo went out there and made it look pretty easy there. So yeah, this is a pretty competitive fight, I think, on paper. I like a lot of things from both guys. On the Bill Algeo side, he kind of reminds me a lot like a Billy Quarantillo, where he just puts on a pace that a lot of guys can't keep up on. He's landing almost 6 significant strikes per minute. He has really good grappling, and a lot of times guys are taking him down, but he can be taken down, but he can get right back up. Just really a big fan of Algeo here, and I think Bootsy's a big fan of Algeo as well. So should be a pretty close fight. I've not take a look at the line yet, so we'll see that in a second. But on paper, seems like a very close fight here.
Yeah, it does. Look, they're almost the same age. Algeo an inch taller, Fili an inch of reach. Fili 9 more pro fights and about 40 more minutes in the cage, about 2.5 more years as a pro, 12 more UFC fights, over 110 more minutes in the UFC cage. So the measurables are even, but the experience is definitely Fili. At the UFC level, both of these guys are finishing at a 33% rate. At the UFC level, Algeo has never been finished. He's been subbed twice as a pro, but I think they came a long time ago. And Fili's been finished 50% of the time, 4 out of 8 losses, and he's been finishing 55% of his pro losses. So, you see a ton of volume from Algeo, but you see the same thing from Fili over a much bigger sample size, as a matter of fact. So Algeo throwing 10.5, Fili throwing just under 10.5. But Algeo is a lot more accurate. Fili shows a lot more power, and Fili's better defensively, as he's got a 52% striking defense, while Algeo about 43%. Algeo spending about 45% of his fights in control time positions for or against, and for Fili, it's about 35, 36. But I would say Fili, I would say actually Algeo is a lot more efficient in that he's only got 5 takedowns, but he's given up 23 takedowns, right? But even though he's gotten out takedowned by his opponents 18 takedowns, he's only being out controlled by about 3%. So this guy's doing a good job winning control time positions without really having to get takedowns, which is pretty good. And Fili has got more takedowns than his opponents, but he's getting 15% control time and giving up 20. But Fili's been in a couple of fights with guys like Bryce Mitchell, I think, who controlled him about 13 out of 15 minutes in that fight. So I think that Fili's probably the more likely guy to wrestle and to win control time positions here. And on the feet, I think Fili's the better striker. If we look at the strength of schedule, Fili's fighting the more experienced competition, Algeo fighting the better win-loss competition. Better ratio in Algeo's wins, much more experienced competition, though, for Fili. And the losses are similar, but a little bit better for Fili. I think it's a great fight. But I think Fili's got a few more tools to win minutes and land the bigger shots and have the more shining moments in this fight. But, dude, Algeo is super tough, almost impossible to finish, especially up at this level. Very, very durable. I kind of like a fight goes to decision bet here. And one of the things I did right before Stat Diggers was go back and watch that Burns-Algeo fight. Look, we've seen some bad cardio performances. I think that might be the worst. I don't think I've ever seen anybody death gas within 2 minutes. He was done after 2 minutes. Do you remember? So he was in that triangle, and then Algeo just squirmed his way out of it. And then Algeo got on top, and then he stood back up and said, stand back up. And it took about 15 seconds for Herbert Burns to get off the ground. That was, I believe, 2 or 2.5 minutes into the fight. I've never seen anything like it. Are you muted?
Yes, I was. I was just saying I was shocked that fight even got to the second round, because at the end of the first round, Burns was just laying there.
Yeah.
And I think Gilbert had to come in and pick him up and take him over the corner, right? So, as far as this fight, it's a close fight. We have Fili is the slight favorite. He opened up as a plus 140 dog, currently minus 135. Bill Algeo opened up minus 160, currently plus 115. You mentioned the fight goes to decision. Very good look there. It looks like they have that at minus 185. So, yeah, over 2.5 fight goes, I think, are very, very good looks, as both guys are just, I don't see, either guy getting finished in this match. I know Fili got knocked out in his last fight early on against Brito, but Brito hits like a truck. So I think fight goes is probably the best way to play this fight.
Yeah, and Algeo is not knocking people out. I mean, it's called a knockout over Herbert Burns, but he just couldn't stand up. I mean, that's the first time I've ever seen that. Have you ever seen a guy who was ordered to stand up, couldn't stand up, and the ref just stopped it? That was Keith Peterson. Keith Peterson who stopped that fight. You need to murder people to get Keith Peterson to stop a fight. Keith Peterson stopped the fight just by looking at a guy on the ground who, with his eyes, was saying, I don't want to fight anymore. So, yeah, I'm leaning Fili here. I got smoked because I had Fili as the ass shaving of the week against Joe Anderson Brito, and that's the common opponent here. And Algeo beat Brito, and Fili got sent to the shadow realm by Brito. So it shows you how durable Bill Algeo is. I think this fight probably goes to decision, and I think the pick for me will be Fili by decision.
Yeah, I think as of now, I will be leaning with the dog, but it's a close fight, fight that I do want to look into a little bit more. But I do like really both guys, but I like that cardio, that pace, that output of Bill Algeo in this fight. All right, we'll move on to my favorite fights, probably on the entire card. We have Joe Pyfer going against Alen Amedovski. We have Pyfer, 25 years old, 6'2", with a 75-inch reach. Alen Amedovski, 34 years old, 5'10", with a 74-inch reach. Pyfer is 9 years younger. Pyfer with a 4-inch height advantage, and Pyfer with a 1-inch reach advantage. Tail of the tape heavily in favor of Pyfer, and not only the tail of the tape, but everything is in favor of Joe Pyfer in this matchup. He's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He got submitted by Jonathan Patty. Not a good look there. He did win a knockout by knockout against Chase Gamble. He got knocked out against Dustin Stoltzfus. That was like an injury in that fight. And then he knocked out Austin Trotman. And then he got a knockout win against Ozzy Diaz. I think it was either the first or second episode week.
Second one.
Second season or second week of the season this season. Alen Amedovski is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Watching tape on this guy is hilarious. He made his debut against Krzysztof Jotko. We saw Jotko go out there and just take him down and control him for, I think it was like 12 or 13 minutes out of a 15-minute fight. Against John Phillips, he went in there and he stood and banged with John Phillips for 15 seconds. He got knocked out by John Phillips, and then he got kneed bad to the head against Joseph Holmes, and then submitted shortly after. This is Joe Pyfer all day, every day. Joe Pyfer is going to be better everywhere. He's going to have the much better striking, I'm not sure what Alen Amedovski's good at outside of knocking out bums. He's knocked out a lot of these bums outside of the UFC. But outside of that, outside of the power and knocking these low-level guys out, I just don't think he offers a ton. His last win had to have come like years ago. His last win was against Ibrahim Main. Like that had to have been so long ago at this point. He's looked horrible in every single fight. He's not had a second of success in any of these fights. And now he's going against Joe Pyfer, who's a killer. He's a phenomenal wrestler, grappler, and has a ton of power in his hands. And he showed that off against Ozzy Diaz. I think Joe Pyfer can knock out Alen Amedovski. I think he can, if he wants to make it super easy, just take this guy down. I think he has a 0% takedown defense, Amedovski. Yeah. Take him down, and his ground game is non-existent. So Joe Pyfer, he's a big favorite, but a big favorite for a reason. This is a fight, and anything can happen, and Amedovski does possess power, but it's just hard to see Joe Pyfer not getting his hand raised in this one. This fight just screams violence to me because it's a Alen Amedovski fight, and that means violence. The only person that was not able to finish him was Krzysztof Jotko, who doesn't finish anybody, and Jotko got into some very dominant positions. He had him in the crucifix. He was pounding away with elbows, and there was like 30 seconds left. I'm shocked Krzysztof Jotko did not finish Alen Amedovski. It almost looked like Jotko bet the decision prop, or like the fight goes decision, because he just was able to get into dominant positions easily. Amedovski's ground game is terrible. So yeah, it's Pyfer all day, Pyfer however he wants. But violence is something I'm highly considering. I think this fight ends inside the distance more often than not. Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's got to be violence. I got to tell you, I'm shocked. When you go back and you watch the tape on Amedovski, he's got wins over Will Fleury and Ibrahim Mane. They're both good regional scene fighters, and it shocks me because this guy, Amedovski, is one of the worst fighters that I've ever seen at the UFC level. I mean, Sano, Anderson Silva's friend with the blonde hair. I forget what his name is, but he was awful. There's been some bad ones, but this guy's terrible, man. I mean, he's not good at anything. I can't believe he beat Will Fleury. I can't believe he beat Ibrahim Mane. Yeah. This dude, he's got 0% takedown defense, and he's been controlled for 61% of his UFC career. And I mean, like, the only guy not to finish him was Jotko. And Jotko is the kind of guy who goes after he eats half a banana and gives the other half to his wife. And he's like, I can't finish this. Can you finish this? This is absolutely going to finish inside the distance. And Alen Amedovski's only win condition is first round knockout. It's the only way he's ever won a fight in his career. So yeah, violence. What do they have? The fight doesn't go here.
Let me take a peek here. So we have the fight goes to decision at. Oh, it's out of order. Okay, we got the fight goes decision is plus 175. The fight doesn't go decision is minus 245.
Yeah, I'd be willing to put 5 units at minus 245 to win 2. That's how confident I would be that this thing is going to finish inside the distance. But I don't think that line's going to be around minus 245 when it opens on the other books. There should be it should be a 1.5 over under, and it'll probably open juiced for the under. So yeah, this is Pyfer. It's inside the distance. Pyfer should probably be minus 1,000 here, honestly. But Amedovski first round knockout is always possible, and I might even sprinkle that just because it's literally his only path to victory here. But this is body bags Pyfer all day.
Yep, I think so. I can't think of a worse fighter other than Yazong Hu, but I think Yazong Hu got cut. And funny enough, they were supposed to fight each other. And I had a bet on Yazong Hu plus money against Amedovski.
Yeah, and I told you that you were a moron for betting on that fight, and you were lucky it didn't happen because you would have never fucking forgiven yourself if Amedovski knocked that dude out. And I mean, you're very hard on yourself when you lose bets that are bad bets, And I mean, I wouldn't have been able to talk you through that. We might have had to have you on suicide watch if that fight actually took place. Funny story. When that fight happened, I fell asleep and woke up at literally the minute the fight started, finding out that fight was canceled because it got canceled during my nap. So I wound up getting destroyed in DraftKings because I was like almost 100% exposed to that fight because I knew one of those bums was getting knocked out.
Yeah, they're both horrible. But yeah,
Horrible.
Joe Pyfer is a big favorite. He's like minus 410. Amedovski plus 310. I believe Pyfer is the biggest favorite on the entire card. And yeah, like you said, I think it could probably even be wider outside of a first round knockout. I think it's Pyfer all day. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Tanner Boser going against Rodrigo Nascimento. We have Boser, 31 years old, 6'2" with a 75-inch reach. We have Nascimento, who is 29 years old, 6'2" with an 80-inch reach. Nascimento, 2 years younger. And he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage as well. He's training out of ATT, good gym there. Tanner Boser, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, a knockout win against Philippe Lins, a knockout win against Rafael Pessoa, a decision loss to Andre Arlovsky, decision loss to Ilir Latifi, a knockout win against Oven St. Preux. As far as Nascimento, a 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He made his debut, I believe, against Dontel Mays. He won that fight by submission, lost by knockout against Chris Daukaus, and then won by knockout against Alain Badeau. Not a fight I'm looking forward to a ton. We kind of got a striker versus grappler. Nascimento, I believe, is a black belt in BJJ. Most of his wins do come by submission. He's going to look to get this fight down to the mat. If he does, he probably has a lot of success. If not, it's probably Tanner Boser. Striker versus grappler matchup. I think it's an interesting one in heavyweight division. But Weezy, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this should be a fun fight, man. I mean, Boser's a good striker who manages distance well and is getting some finishes. He's finished 3 of his 4 UFC wins. And Nascimento is a good grappler who's actually shown some nice striking in his last couple of fights. Rodrigo, I believe, possesses the 3rd largest ass in the UFC behind number 1 Parker Porter and number 2 dump truck Norman Dumont. But he's a big dude. He's a big heavyweight here. And he's got excellent submission grappling. So this is very, very clearly a striker versus grappler matchup here, where Boser is going to be the smaller guy. It's Nascimento, who's 2 years younger and who's got a 5-inch reach advantage here. But Boser's got 19 more fights, 330 more minutes in the pro cage, 3 more fights at the UFC level, and 60 more minutes in the UFC cage. So he's far more experienced than Rodrigo is. Rodrigo, though, 10 professional fights, every single one of them is finished inside the distance. So he's definitely a killer-be-killed fighter. And for Boser's very durable. He's only been finished in 1 of 8 losses. And but he's got a 65% finish rate. So he's finished 13 of his 20 pro wins, 11 of them by knockout and 2 of them by submission. So we look at those numbers for Boser in the striking, and they're really impressive. He's almost doubling up the amount of significant strikes that his opponents land per minute, landing 4.23, absorbing 2.16, throwing over 2 more significant strike attempts per minute than his opponents, while Rodrigo is absorbing about 0.6 more significant strikes per minute than he lands. And he's showing a piss-poor 38% striking defense, while we see Boser at 63%. So very important stylistic matchup here. Boser should be the minute winner on the feet, but I think Rodrigo's getting better on the feet. But the question is Rodrigo going to be able to get this fight to the ground? Because Tanner's showing 70% striking or 70% takedown defense, and he's only been controlled 77 minutes in the UFC cage, only been controlled for 7.7 minutes of it. That's 10%. So Rodrigo is going to have to probably win more than 10% of the time of this fight in control time positions in order to have a good chance to win. But he's gotten 2 of his 5 takedowns. He's attempting 1.71 submissions per 15 minutes, and he's getting that many takedowns per 15 minutes as well. And he's spending, about 43% of his fights. That's about 3/7 of his fights are in control time positions for or against. So he might be able to get it there. But look, Boser, who's the better striker, it's Boser who's far more experienced here, and Boser who's fought the far better brand of competition, not just at the UFC level, but on the regional scene as well, as Boser was fighting killers over in ACB before he got to the UFC. So it's not like this dude hasn't seen dudes that can wrestle and are going to try to drown him on the ground before. But you get underneath that Rodrigo Nascimento ass, like I say, because we saw what Norma Dumont looked like when she got that dump truck on top of her opponent, Wolf, yesterday. It didn't look pretty, man. Oh, I mean, it looked, Norma looked pretty, but it didn't look pretty what she was doing to poor Danielle Wolf down there, pounding her head through the canvas. So you don't want this dude Nascimento on top of you. He's a black belt, and he's fucking huge. So the Tanner's got to keep this standing. But if he does, he should win this fight.
Yeah, and I'm looking on Tapology right now. It says the Alen Badeau fight is a no contest.
I think I saw that, but I don't know what's up with that because that didn't get changed to a no contest until like a year later. So I'm wondering why that happened.
I don't know.
Maybe somebody in the chat knows. I don't know what that's all about though.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about it. Yeah, it says no contest. So yeah,
maybe he's been suspended. Maybe that's why we haven't seen Nascimento for a minute.
Yeah, that could be it. So we'll have to see. But yeah, regardless, it got turned to a no contest against Alen Badeau there. Yeah, we take a look at the line here. We see that Nascimento is the dog, opened up plus 185, currently plus 156. Tanner Boser opened up minus 220, currently minus 181. I think it would probably be dog or pass. Dog or ass, right? With the Nascimento there. But
you get both.
Yes, maybe both there. But
dog and if you're betting Nascimento, you're betting dog and ass.
Yes, so dog and ass for me. It's because if he does get on top, I mean, I think he's a black belt, very good grappler, solid wrestling, and he should have like a massive advantage on the mat. So I kind of see this fight more so 50-50 with Boser having the clear striking advantage and Nascimento having the clear grappling advantage, who's able to get their way. So yeah, I'm leaning ass here.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind that Tanner Boser in 7 UFC fights has only seen 10 takedown attempts. So it's not like we've seen Tanner face a game plan outside of the Latifi fight, where he was seeing a lot of takedown attempts. So, if Rodrigo pushes that grappling heavy pace, he might have a chance to find some success here. And Rodrigo's striking is improving by leaps and bounds over there training at ATT. It's going to get better. So, and he's only 29 years old. This guy Nascimento could certainly make some waves before his career is over because heavyweight is a division if you're 29, you're just a baby.
Yeah, 100%. Alrighty, we'll move on. We have 2 more fights. We have a phenomenal fight here. Chidi and Njokuani going against Gregory Rodrigues. We have Njokuani, who is 33 years old, 6'3" with an 80-inch reach. Rodrigues, 30 years old, 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. Rodrigues, 3 years younger. Njokuani with a pretty big 5-inch reach advantage. Njokuani is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Fought on the Contender Series against Mario Souza, won that fight by knockout. He knocked out Marc-André Barriault in like 20 seconds or less, which was extremely impressive considering how tough and durable Barriault is. Just walked right through him and then knocked out Dusko Todorovic as well. This guy has a ton of power. Both guys do. Rodrigues, he's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He got knocked out by Jordan Williams on the Contender Series. He won a decision against Dusko Todorovic. He knocked out Jung Young Park. He lost a decision against Armin Petrosian, more due to the fight IQ in that fight. It was a very close fight, though. And then he knocked out, again, a very tough and durable Julian Marquez. Weezy, both these guys have so much power. I think somebody's getting knocked out here. I think it's a very close fight. I mean, it really just comes down to who's going to land the big shot first and who can take that big shot, because both these guys have so much power in their hands, and both these guys have been knocked out a good amount of time. So this is another spot that's clear violence in terms of picking a winner. I think it's tough to do because I think both these guys are super live to catch the other guy. So Weezy, I'm curious to your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, this is a great fight. I mean, Njokuani, talk about a career resurgence this late in his career, dude. 30 professional fights, and I mean, he was coming off some losses. He coming into the UFC with 7 losses and 6 of them being inside the distance. Finished, 43% of the time by submission, 43% of the time by knockout. And, he's finishing at a 71% rate. Rodrigues, as a pro, finishing at an 83% rate, and he's been finished in 2 of 4 losses, both times by knockout. And we see that Rodrigues, I mean, for a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who's considered to be a grappler first, he's fallen in love with his hands. And he's willing to just stand in front of his opponent and throw bombs and trust his chin and hope that he can come out the other side okay. And boy, he had a fantastic knockout win over Jun Young Park, a guy who's known for his durability. But look at Chidi. I don't know what to think of Chidi yet because it's 3 fights, but only 16 minutes in the cage. And he's just absolutely destroying his opponents. He's throwing 6.3 significant strike attempts per minute. There's only 3.3 coming back his way. And he's outlanding his opponents by 4.21 significant strikes per minute. He's landing 5.41. His opponents are landing 1.2. Those are like Islam Makhachev numbers. It's crazy, but it's in a very small sample size. And that sample size, if we go before the UFC, Chidi he's losing a lot of fights, and it looks like he's quitting out there half the time when he loses. So it's very interesting. But there's just some video game numbers here. 85.71% striking accuracy. How the fuck is that possible? Over 105 significant strike attempts. That's unbelievable. And then a 63% striking defense. Rodrigues, landing 6, absorbing 5.73. He's in some super high volume fights. Rodrigues only attempted 13 takedowns in 5 fights. He's gotten 7 of them, out-controlling his opponents at about a 4-to-1 ratio. Chidi's out-controlling his opponents at a 2-to-1 ratio, but he's attempting 1 takedown and his opponents have attempted 11. So Chidi's ground game's getting a lot better. The strength of schedule numbers almost identical for these guys. The wins just a little bit better for Rodrigues. And the loss is bad for Rodrigues, it turns out, because he lost to Jordan Williams. And then he lost a split decision to Petrosian. So, which I thought he won that fight, but it is what it is. Boy, this is one where I'm absolutely going to be looking violence just because Rodrigues doesn't seem to be interested in winning minutes. He's looking to get in and get out and, be in exciting fights. And that's exactly what he's done against Marquez, against Petrosian, against Park, against Todorovic. Those were all bangers, dude. They were great fights. And Njokuani is going to stand with him and bang with him there. I like Chidi. He's the far superior striker. And if he can stop the takedowns here, I think that he will be the one to win this fight.
Yeah, and you won't have to worry about the takedowns because if Rodrigues isn't trying to take down Petrosian, I just don't think he has any interest in doing so. He has such an amazing background in BJJ, legit black belt, phenomenal grappler, just he doesn't choose to use it, which I would have liked him to use it in the Petrosian fight. And obviously, if he uses it here, it's just a clear path to victory, but cannot count on him to do so. It's a closely lined fight. Rodrigues opened up plus 125, currently minus 119. And Njokuani opened up minus 145, currently minus 101. I feel like it should be a straight pick 'em. Kind of like I was saying last week with Johnny Walker, Ian Kudalaba. I thought someone was getting finished. I feel the same way here. I think somebody's getting finished in this fight. I feel like nobody should be favored. I feel like it should be a straight pick 'em. We see the fight doesn't go to decision is minus 275. The fight doesn't go to decision, or the fight goes to decision plus 195. I'm going to be curious to see where they set that over under, probably 1.5. But yeah, I think there's going to be some violence here for sure. Somebody's getting finished.
What was the fight goes?
Fight goes like plus 195.
195. Yeah, the fight doesn't go overpriced by 18.4% when you compare it to the divisional benchmark. And the fight goes underpriced by 11.1% when you compare it to the divisional decision benchmark. But it's clear that the fighter's stats in 8 UFC fights are leaning towards the violent side. Very interesting fight. Hell of a co-main event. It's going to be a banger. Maybe not as good and as high level as Chikadze Yusuf would have been, but this is a great replacement. And let's face it, we haven't been groaning about a lot of these fights thus far at all. These are some good matchups here from top to bottom. This is a fun card.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any bad matchups. I'm looking forward to this card quite a bit. No complaints really about anything. So, yeah, I think it's a really good card. Move on to the main event, though. Before we do so, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back in about 60 seconds. And we are back breaking down UFC Vegas 60, about to talk about the main event. 150 of you in here with us. If you guys have not already, be sure to leave a like, subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Just hit the 20K mark last night. So, yeah, pretty awesome milestone here at Pub Sports Radio, and it is all thanks to you guys. All right, main event, Cory Sandhagen going against Song Yadong. We have Sandhagen, 30 years old, 5'11" with a 70-inch reach. Song Yadong, he is 24 years old, 5'8" with a 67-inch reach. Song is going to be 6 years younger. It's going to be Sandhagen with a 3-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage as well. Sandhagen is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Had a submission loss to Aljamain Sterling, a knockout win against Marlon Moraes, a knockout win against Frankie Edgar, a decision loss to TJ Dillashaw, and then a decision loss to Petr Yan. As far as Song Yadong, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, a decision win against Marlon Vera, a decision loss against Kyler Phillips, a decision win against Casey Kenny, a knockout win against Julio Arce, and then a knockout win against Marlon Moraes. Weezy, we got a phenomenal main event here. 2 very good guys, 2 very young guys, especially Song Yadong. We talk about it every time. This guy's only 24 years old, and the guy has 26 professional fights, and he's fighting at this level against a guy like Cory Sandhagen in a main event at only 24 years old. Just crazy to think about. He's training at a good gym. Very good fighter. Both of these guys, very good fighters. So, Weezy, what are your thoughts on this main event here?
Yeah, Song Yadong, only 24, and he's got 26 professional fights, took his first pro fight at the age of 15. But Sandhagen's much bigger, much longer, and he's a switch stance fighter. So I love the measurables here because even though Song Yadong is 6 years younger, Sandhagen's 30. That's your peak right there, for a fighter, because you've got the experience combined with the ability to still be able to push a pace where you're not breaking down yet. Song Yadong has the experience advantage, but these Chinese dudes, man, they fight like 9 times a year on the regional scene out there. It's bizarre how much experience these Chinese fighters come into the UFC with. Nurdenbeka Shayalan has something like 43 wins on the regional scene. Remember Rong Zhu came in here at the age of 21 and he had 27 professional fights. Yeah. A lot of these guys are just fighting a crazy amount. No difference here with Song Yadong, but I'm not really giving him an experience advantage here, even though he's been fighting for 2 years longer, has 8 more pro fights and 50 more minutes in the pro cage. It was all on the very low-level regional scene here. But when we compare the UFC experience, 10 fights apiece, 100 minutes apiece. So very similar there. Finish rates, very similar. Sandhagen, the better finisher overall and at the UFC level. And both of these guys are durable. Sandhagen only been finished once in his career. Song Yadong only been finished once in his career. So only 2 out of their 9 combined losses have been inside the distance. Both of these guys have significant strike differentials that are better than 1. They're both throwing more opponent volume than their opponents, but Sandhagen in particular throwing 14.35 significant strike attempts per minute, while his opponents only throw 10. The power number is great for Yadong at 1% significant strikes, knockdowns per total significant strikes landed. It's about 0.6% for Sandhagen, and it's 0.75 knockdowns per 15 minutes for Song, 0.56 for Sandhagen. Sandhagen's only been knocked down once. Song Yadong has never been knocked down at the UFC level. When it comes to grappling, Cory attempts 1.5 takedowns per fight. Song Yadong 0.7 takedowns per fight. So I don't think we can expect either of these guys to grapple much. It's just not what they do. They're both more comfortable striking. Song trusts his chin and his power, and Sandhagen throws, from odd angles, drowns you in volume, and is very unorthodox and, is very powerful in his own right. He doesn't look like a power striker, but the fact that he comes from such strange angles and that he pushes such a pace makes him very, very dangerous. So we look at the strength of schedule, and it's Cory Sandhagen. The ratio is better. He's fighting more experienced competition. You see these names. Petr Yan lost by unanimous decision, but that fight was kind of a coin flip. I thought he beat TJ Dillashaw. Yeah. He knocks out Frankie Edgar. He knocks out Marlon Moraes. He gets caught in a weird spot with Aljamain and gets subbed. And then before that, he's just absolutely destroying everybody. Song loses a unanimous decision to Kyler Phillips, barely gets by Casey Kenny. But then you see him knocking out Arce, knocking out Moraes. He's got a win over Marlon Vera. That's aged very well. 3-round fight, though. It wasn't 5-round Marlon Vera, which we know is a mythical creature. So I like Sandhagen's strength of schedule. I think he's the better minute winner in the striking. I think he's longer and more experienced. Not more experienced, but he's definitely got that measurables advantage and is on par with Song Yadong's experience. So I'm definitely picking Sandhagen in this spot, but it's not a surprise. He's a fairly big favorite here.
Yeah, he is. He opened up as a -160 favorite. He's currently -200. And then Song Yadong opened up +140. He is currently +170. Song has been showing off that power, but, Cory's super tough. I don't think we've ever seen him. Maybe got hurt once. I think he's been dropped once in the UFC. Outside of that, never been knocked out. Very good chin on him. And yeah, I think this fight's going to play outstanding. Sandhagen's obviously going to have the advantage on the mat. It's just, is he going to go out there and shoot takedowns? I'm kind of leading towards no. I think we're going to strike for 5 rounds. And on the feet, I do favor Sandhagen. I love the volume of Sandhagen. He's long, he's rangy, has lots of tools. But Song does have that power. So we'll have to see, but I do like Sandhagen as well. Not at -200, though. We'll take a look at the fight goes to decision. I bet it is juiced to the yes. The fight goes to decision is -155. The fight doesn't get the decision is +115. I would lean towards that fight goes to decision, but it's 5 rounds. And I do think it's going to be an action-packed fight, but I would lead towards it going over and going the distance. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the thing about this is that Sandhagen has all the 5-round experience and Song has none. So I think that's very important here in that Song is a guy who will mix in the wrestling. He trains a team alpha male, but man, when you're fighting a 5-round fight instead of a 3-round fight, you have to be very careful about picking your spots when to wrestle, which means that if I can't count on Song trying to wrestle at all or very, very little, I see Cory winning with the volume and the accuracy here. And I see, Cory being durable enough to handle maybe the big shots of Song, but we'll see, man. One of the biggest power punchers that he's faced. But he's been in there with Jan.
Yep. He's been in there some really, really good guys there. So, should be a good fight, but I think we are both on the Sandhagen side. I can't wait to see what the props are for the fight because maybe something will stick out. Maybe like the Sandhagen 4-5 decision could be something to look at. So we'll have to see and talk about that later in the week. All right. We did it. We went through it, fairly quickly here. We went through 14 fights. We'll see if they add on a 15th. I hope not, for content's sake. But yeah, 14 fights, went through them all. And yeah, going through the card, I think there's a lot of spots to stick out. Some money lines, some underdogs, some violence props. So lots of spots sticking out here. And I think it's a good card. We talked about all these matchups. I don't think there's one fight where you're like, dude, this fight sucks. I think all fights on this card are good. So any final thoughts on this card as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's just a great action-packed card from start to finish, and I'm looking at a lot of underdog spots. I've got plus money on Sarah McMahon. I've got plus money on Damon Jackson. And then there was another one that I liked. I forget which one it is. Fili isn't plus money, right?
No.
Okay. And then, Gravely's plus money, right? I like the Gravely plus money. It's an interesting week. I'm going to be looking to I'll probably have a lot more action than I did last week when I only had 2 track bets, thanks to all the late changes.
Damn, Gravely was plus 169. We were just talking about that fight. It seems like an hour ago. He went from plus 169 to plus 145 like that.
Damn it.
But on FanDuel, it's still plus 164. So I might have to hop on that FanDuel plus 164 there. But yeah, that line's moving towards the Gravely side, which I did not really expect, but because Javid is such a fan favorite. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens throughout the week. But yeah, Uncle Weezy, let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on throughout the week. And yeah, let them know.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at MMA Weezy. You can find me on my Patreon, Uncle Weezy, and you can also find me right here on Pub Sports Radio 3 times a week. Stat Diggers on Sunday, DFS show on Wednesday, watch along on Saturday. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy, every Tuesday night for a full card breakdown, 10 o'clock Central Time, called Just the Tip. Every Wednesday for Ask Weezy. And then you can find me on the MMA Engine YouTube channel tomorrow night for probability, Brady, or before the Monday Night Football game, we're going to give you all the data-driven information that you need to absolutely smack up these bookies with your time prop bets, beat them with a bag of oranges until you juice them. So the only thing left to do now is to stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Vegas 60, Brady. Let's get it. Let's get it, chat.
Let's get it. You guys can find me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers, here on Pub Sports Sundays and Wednesdays, on the MMA Engine, and also on DFS by the numbers on YouTube. Best of luck for UFC Vegas 60. Thank you all for hanging out. Leave a like on your way out. Subscribe here to Pub Sports, and we'll talk to you very soon. See you guys later.